Nope.
Cool.
You're unplugged.
Is it just hanging out right there?
No, you
I
can put it
asked
away.
them to unplug everything.
Well done.
They said I want this to be unplugged.
Listen, welcome to Visiting Writers Series Unplugged. Stay long enough, it'll be VWS After Dark. It's a little raunchy, but it's okay, you can handle it.
I can't.
Leah can't. This is already too much for Leah. This is good. Hello and welcome. Dan Rosenberg. I'm the director of the Visiting Writers Series, and I'm looking at Bruce, which is reminding me to, of course, thank NYSCA, the New York State Council on the Arts, whose generous funding allows us to bring wonderful writers like Cassie Donish to campus. How'd I do? Good. All right. All right. I'm very excited to introduce Cassie tonight. We had a lovely master class earlier today thinking about metaphor and the private relationships we have with language and maybe the inherent violence of the metaphor. It was a long and complicated conversation that I really wish you had been at, given your facial expressions right now. It's wonderful. It was a wonderful masterclass, and thank you, Cassie, so much for coming and sharing your ideas and your work with us. And I'm excited for tonight, where we get to hear Cassie Donish reading from some. Are we going to read from these two new work? These two.
Yeah.
These two. Awesome. Cassie is the author of 3 books: Beautyberry, The Year of the Femme, which won the 2018 Iowa Poetry Prize. And these are both books of poetry. And then on the mezzanine is a nonfiction chapbook, which won the 2017 Gold Lion Press Nonfiction Chapbook Competition. Judged by Maggie Nelson, who is the patron saint and favorite lyrical nonfiction writer of a whole slew of Wellesians. And so when I saw the blurb on the back, I was like, yes, okay, that is lovely, and that will go over nicely with many of us here. Before I bring Cassie up, I wanted to call your attention to these beautiful things made here at the Book Arts Center by Leah Mackin, who could not be here tonight because she is at the New York Art Book Fair, because she's a practicing artist doing good things in the world, but she was very sad to miss this because when I sent her this poem by Cassie Donish to make this broadside out of, I said, what do you think about this one? And she wrote back immediately, oh my God, I love it, I have ideas already, I want to do it. So she made this beautiful thing. It is available for sale tonight for the wildly reduced price of $10. Yes, they will be way more expensive after tonight, so if you think that your wall needs some beautiful verbal and visual art, tonight's the night. If you come up to me tomorrow, though, we can work something out. Just wink, wink. And that goes for me, and Cassie also has brought books, which will be for sale at the end of the event as well. The schedule is very simple. I'm going to shut up soon. Cassie will come up and read, and then we'll have some time for Q&As. And then at the end of the evening, please eat more food from back there. And I will remind you again at the end of upcoming things, and it will be lovely. So Cassie was supposed to arrive last night and was stuck in her small regional airport for 5.5 hours, and then made their way to Chicago, where they spent the night in a hotel. But that's not the right term. It wasn't spent the night because they got about 3 hours of sleep and then had to get up incredibly early to get out of a flight, to get out here in time for the master class. And our plan involved a decompression, quiet nap time that just turned into entertaining my 5-year-old. So, so you have been through so much to be here, and we really appreciate it. And I think I wanted to just sort of share this weird personal thing, because what struck me most when reading all of these books in rapid succession was how deeply open and intimate Cassie's writing is, even in works that just on the look of them might seem, oh, something odd is happening, something surprising, something disjointed is occurring, right? There are a lot of slashes here. I'm not sure what the relationship is between this text and this text. The relationship is that they're written by someone for whom deep thinking and deep feeling are inextricably intertwined, and it makes for a gorgeous, immersive experience whether you're reading her poems or her nonfiction, or their nonfiction. You encounter someone who is engaging with the world with an attentiveness to language and other people and their own experience in a way that is just immersive and riveting, and it's a real pleasure. And when I was reading them, I was like, I'm so excited. I can't wait to bring them here to read, and I want to hear Cassie read all of this wonderful work and share it with you right now. So please join me in welcoming up Cassie Donish.
Thanks so much, Dan. That was such a lovely introduction, and I really appreciate it. And thanks so much to all of you for being here, and to Dan for inviting me, and to Wells College and the department, and NISCA.
NISCA.
I'm just gonna, oh, here's the water, it's hiding. Okay. So, as Dan said, I have been writing in a lot of different forms. I've been writing some nonfiction, and I've been writing some poetry, and these genres they start to cross at a certain point. For instance, I'm starting to think, is my nonfiction going to turn into fiction, because maybe I want to push it a little further away from my life, because some of it is so intimate, and I don't mind that, but there are just so many choices that we can potentially make as writers, and thinking about our own needs for our writing and our audience and all of that. So I'm going to start by reading one short poem from this book, The Year of the Femme. And then I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a section from this nonfiction, and then I'm going to read a long sequence from this book. So I'm going to go back and forth a little bit. But these two books came out around the same time, and I was writing them around the same time. So in a way, it's nice to be able to share both of them with you together, and be able to show you how, I guess, how I was thinking through some of the same issues in poetry and in prose. So I will start with this one piece. You'll see, I guess, some of the roots of the emotional roots of where some of my writing, and also just my life, where I come from in terms of some of the subject matter that I deal with. This poem is called Tenderness. To grow up with a father who does not want to be in the world. To be told from a young age by a father that he has trouble being in the world, that he has trouble, and to grow up with a sister who has trouble being in the, and another sister who, and there was a second father who also, and as an adult she has trouble finding those who do not have trouble. She finds this one beautiful, later finds that he, like her fathers and sisters, does not want to be, has trouble being, but the feeling of being with those who is so familiar, her limbs go limp with trust. So that's a short poem from this book, and a lot of it is about intimacy and relationships, but there's also a family history that kind of comes into it and informs I think the emotional profile of the character or speaker / the author who's kind of moving through this world. And you know, I think I'm not I'm saying that because I think there is a distinction, even while they also are blended in together, myself and the speaker in the poems. So now I'm going to read from On the Mezzanine, which is a dramatic kind of gender and queerness and mental health journey, and you'll see a little bit. I'm just going to read from the beginning, from the opening, and I'll skip around slightly, but most of this is just from the beginning, so you can see how it starts. One year, I imagined life as a series of opening and closing elevator doors, and nearby a series of moving walkways on which some figures are standing, some walking, some running. There are escalators too, and stairwells, and large screens on which flash images of these same mechanisms of movement. A set of doors opens, and there is one's mother, father, sister, brother, daughter, son. There is one's lover, one's friend. The doors close again, a fragment of a greeting hanging in the air, or an entire lifetime of conversation, echoes punctuating the stillness, like the feeling of a room just after a lover has gone. That year, in between seasons, as winter turned to spring, I watched, this is now, I am watching, as doors opened and closed. In the park, the pavilions stood ceremoniously. The towering trees were bare, except for the matching junipers, whose needles, when rubbed between fingers, left the smell of gin even in the coldest week. Each day, new color tore through vision, shades elicited by the internal, singular clocks each organic thing seems to harbor. Yellow flare of forsythia, here, now there too. Japanese magnolias, their pink and purple teacups, their exquisite lean. Yes, the year I speak of is now, just into spring, nearly April, month of cool pleasures. Human social life is a continuous flow of offerings and requests. Each sound you and I uttered a form of, can you, will you accept this? Of all the moments where to begin, we sat at the table in my living room. On the phone earlier that day, you'd said, you're avoiding me. Yes, I am. Doesn't that make sense in our situation? I'd said. You showed up at my apartment anyway. Something red tore through the room. Where are things? In amorous space or in mundane space? Asks Roland Bard. I realize I've been wondering about this for a long time. On the kitchen counter, an open bottle of tequila, a skeleton on its label. In the bathroom, various shades of eyeshadow and makeup brushes strewn. On the windowsill, your phone playing music. On the bed, the sheets not yet torn. We'd each left a person standing in a room. We'd entered a new room through opposite-facing doors of sliding glass. Now we were together, standing embraced. Over my shoulder, you could see the person I'd left through the glass. Over yours, I could see the person you'd left. Beside her, there was a child. From the looks on their faces, I could tell they couldn't see me. The first time I put makeup on you, straddling your lap. After which, we made love for the first time, and violently. Black eyeliner, a smear of shimmering eyeshadow the color of tea with milk, black mascara, some lipstick. I'm putting the exact makeup on you that I have on, I said. It was what I had with me. You said you felt seen. This was one of those weeks where I can still recall everything. Your look in the cafe on Thursday, the text on Friday, the Saturday storm, and now it was Sunday. Tell me if I go too far, okay? You whispered gently above me. Between inhale and exhale, the pause at the crest. Liminal space between seasons, that passing stillness. Moments of confusion in trying to find a word for an indeterminate color. the freedom and paralysis of namelessness. This is where we are. This is where we've languished. The concept of liminality was developed by anthropologists to describe the ambiguity that occurs during the middle stage of rituals of initiation. Say you're the initiant, and you're entering the ritual to move from the category of boy to the category of man, or let's imagine from masculine to feminine, or vice versa, or other crossings we're approaching, whether or not we know it yet. When you step into the circle, you are temporarily outside both categories. For the duration of the ritual, inside that space, you transcend your culture and society. Since you exist in neither category, you are nameless and therefore close to the divine. When you exit the circle, you have transformed. You have crossed into a new category. You have a new name. The walls of my apartment become mobile, animate. They are dynamic, expanding and contracting. Here we begin your ritual. Man only escapes from the laws of this world in lightning flashes, writes Simone Weil. Instance when everything stands still. Instance of contemplation, of pure intuition, of mental void, of acceptance of the moral void. From now on, I won't call myself mistress. I won't call myself lover. I will call myself officiant. But since I have no official training, I admit I'm concerned. What's real? Rose-orange glow, the street lamp outside the window, that pink light on your face, salt of your skin on my tongue, the mattress on the floor, your breathing hard above me, threshing. When I ask you to hurt me, it's not about pain exactly. I want you to take me to the edge of the canyon. I beg, don't let go of my hand. I'm burning in the sun. 2 nights ago, I said to you in bed, being with you like this is almost unbearable. I almost said unbearably beautiful. Your eyes were wide, your lips parted as if you were trying to speak. Finally, you said, I want to talk, but I don't have language. I said, I know. We were barely touching. I watched your pupils dilate at the slightest sensation. My hands will never leave your shoulders. They will never leave your collarbone. You said, I'm dying, just as I was thinking it. I'm dying. At its root, perhaps, my anxiety comes from living in a culture that knows more about violence than sensuality. I would rather practice the latter. I would rather take the latter too far. I would rather die in the latter. On some days, you think about dying, not from sensuality, but from grief. You retreat into yourself beside me. You feel the softness of your own skin with a different kind of desire. Scars on your ankle. You become distant, intense. You ask me to hide sharp objects from you. Often it's after an exchange with your wife, from whom you are now separated, after the two of you talk about your son. You lie with your head in my lap. You touch your sternum, you're short of breath. I can't, you say. I can't actually be writing any of this. I understand deception, though not at the level you practiced it. I know to use the word practice isn't quite correct. It implies a certain degree of intentionality I don't believe you had, even as you led a double life, impulsively meeting up with men for years, using an alias, never telling any of them your real name. The small things, and how I want to gather them to me. Leaves the color of blood, covering my childhood street every fall, and the girl in high school who used to suck my nipples for hours in one of our beds or behind the low cement wall of an apartment garden. How long it took this year to get to spring. I remember that day at the very end of winter. There were some red blossoms already on the trees. When we walked west through the park and then back, we paused to face each other under a pavilion. We didn't hold each other yet. Each phrase, each blossom intimated a spring we would spend together. Such things can be said in hindsight. The memory is a photograph, you and I walking under trees. The memory is a beautiful ghost. Something floated by us, and we held it. Bart writes, from the start, greedy to play a role, scenes they take their position in memory. Often I feel this, I foresee this, at the very moment when these scenes are forming. There are so many things to read on the internet. Late at night, unable to sleep beside one's sleeping lover, one might get up and read about vibrators, mood disorders, attachment theory, codependency, limerence, mixed orientation marriages, hypersexuality, pharmaceutical drugs, success rates of the drugs, suicide rates for queers, women who want to rescue men, suicide rates for people with bipolar depression, electroconvulsive therapy, trans femininity, gender fluidity, family systems, ethical open relationships, genderqueer haircuts, polyamory, divorce rates, realistic dildos, harnesses, the emotional labor of women. And I'll stop there, but that's a little bit from this book. So you kind of see some of the, you see, I think, the narrative that's starting to unfold there in what I read you, but also some of the larger themes that I'm kind of working with and still thinking about and still writing about now. And I think what's interesting to me is that there's so many different stories about those same themes. So I'm just telling one, but I always am interested in all the other stories that people are experiencing right now that have to do with these same things, gender and sexuality and mental health. And what I'm going to read to you now is a little bit of a change in tone, but in a way I think this is, as I've been saying, part of a similar story. This piece that I'm going to read is called Portrait of a Woman Mid-Fall, and it's the opening sequence of the book. So the book opens with that sequence, and then it ends with a sequence called The Year of the Femme, the title sequence. And in a way, for me, this book sort of travels from that portrait of a woman into this, this Year of the Femme, as I myself in my own life was kind of exploring a journey from identifying as a woman to identifying as a queer femme, and then also to coming out as non-binary and using they/them pronouns. So, but I'm going to read you the beginning, which is using a she character in a more binary way, and you can kind of see that that's where things start. But just to give you a picture of where it kind of fits into the book. Okay. Hold on. So this is Portrait of a Woman Mid-Fall. Today she decides to be a dancer. She lies in bed to an urgency of silence. A twirling motion feels engaging. The morning turns when her lover isn't here. If he ever moves out, she'll think about getting a dog. Being a woman means needing a little protection. She gets a little anxious when he travels. The dog will make her feel safer living alone. Some women she knows have lived alone for a long time. They've longed for love. She's had lots of love, too much of it disquieting. She's longed for solitude. Are all women miserable, she wonders. She'll be safer when she's a dancer. The leaves out the window are having a good time. In the mirror, she sees her own shape, which has housed a certain kind of want. It's not that she doesn't want love anymore, but from now on, she'll stick to ideas. She needs a little protection. Ideas are flexible, which protects their shapes. They're moving, spacious. She can embody them. She can ignore them for a while and come back later. They're still there, perfect. They don't mind her involvement with others. Today she wears a men's jacket and goes out into the bright fall. She keeps her heartbreak secret, but not really. People can see right through her, can't they? It's important to have a little certainty. It's important to believe in calm rather than calamity. Even if you're calm, you stay a little heartbroken, and the basin of your heart is appropriately full. Being miserable is the same as being happy. It seems she keeps slipping on a binary. Is there a way to slip out of a binary into a body, something a little more comfortable? The leaves are especially yellow, and she enjoys it. She finds her own enjoyment disconcerting. The shadows of the leaves know exactly where to go. She is selfish because she wants what she wants. She doesn't want to negotiate about where to live or how. There are already enough limits on that. She is selfish about her time. Every choice is already a negotiation. The leaves are turning. From now on, she will negotiate with the world. She is definitely not a good woman. As she gets older, she notices that women are miserable and happy. She notices that some men are empty and try to make women empty. She notices that she makes a lot of generalizations that are not wholly untrue, but also probably come from resentment. Is there a way to shed a thing called socialization? Is there a way to shed gender but admit to its effects? Anger, for instance, is a season that passes too quickly, and she feels only love again. That's her temperament, she thinks. Anger, then resignation, then love. It seems to her to be unproductive. Maybe she should alternate the order, or there should be some other step, like action. Instead, there are waves of feeling. She takes a walk and feels happy, the air is cold. She doesn't change anything. She's really good at resignation. She's not very good at anger. Maybe this is why she doesn't change. She prides herself on her practice of acceptance. It's really resignation, which is feminine and shameful. This seems to be the pattern. Going outside is part of the pattern too. Each day there are fewer leaves on the trees. Each day there are more leaves in the street. Time is a puzzle with interlocking parts. Interlocking parts are meant to be unlocked. Each bit of metal has its own form. Although people are similar to each other, each person is having a distinct experience. She is wearing a necklace of amber. Amber is the color of the day. It is the color of being a woman. At night, she removes it. People are singular and different from each other. A truth over its opposite is also true, but squared. Or is it that a great truth is its own opposite, or that the opposite of a great truth is another great truth? It's time to be outside and make an attempt. The air is a crowd of transparent sequins. She can't get past lovers out of her mind. No, just one specific past lover, and then another. Outside, one sparrow is flying in lopsided circles. Around others, she gets carried away with other ways of seeing. There's something to being left alone. The unfortunate thing is being stuck. It's unfortunate to see life as unfortunate. No matter how unfortunate it is, it's better to see it as fortunate. In the park, she watches the squirrels in the grass. They're energetic. They move toward each other, then away. She wonders if what a squirrel wants changes. She wonders when she'll start saying what she is. She's not sure what she is. There, at last, that is said. She knows what she wants. She wants to separate this cloud from that cloud. That way light can roll out from between the clouds. It can roll out and give some things sharper edges, and upon other things will fall shadows. The effect will be variegation, which is particularly appealing to her. Variegation is a distracting element, and it's exciting. For instance, if she holds up a piece of glass, it will be transparent. It won't be colorless. She can see colors through it. To be folded very neatly into a little pillow of water, that sounds perfect. Today she's going to enjoy the fact that he's gone. She's not even going to think about him. Small and large pillows of water are pleasant things to imagine for those who like to swim. He's not a very good swimmer. She is not going to think about him today. A little pillow of water is something to be neatly folded into. A day is self-contained, and if it wants to see what's around it, it might seep out and look at yesterday and tomorrow and beyond. No, it can't do that. She sees too much everywhere, always looking behind, looking ahead. To see something different is to be neatly folded. However, there are various temporal features to consider. A folding inward is a potentiality, but one with a time limit. The way the ground rises to meet the bottom of a shoe. She's not going anywhere in particular. There is a way of attending to what the body is feeling. There is a way of seeing that could enact a different way of being, a different way of choosing where to be or who or how. She pauses in the center of a field. It doesn't matter how many days are like this. Today still looks like this. She likes how it looks out today is an understatement. The colors of fall mean so much to a certain animal. She means the kind of animal she is, the human kind. The field looks like it's moving away from her. At the edge of a field, a thought waits. Putting it this way gives agency to the thought. It's important to her that it can be said in this way. At the edge of a field, a feeling of arriving waits. Arrival is not a rival of departure. The two have to work together to make anything happen. All the clocks move together through time. In a flock of birds, some birds are a little behind. All the birds are held together by a principle of form. She watches all the clocks gesture at once. The clock in her kitchen, the clock in a past lover's living room. Somewhere, someone unplugs a toaster. Someone with silky hair looks up as she passes. There is an invitation in that glance. She sips whiskey from a glass. She thinks of the man on the porch. She often sees him there, looking up from his phone. There is something delicate about him, something soft in the expression. She wonders what he sees when he looks at her. Today there was a twitch between them, as if he were about to join her on her walk, or ask her to come in. They would already know each other well. There would be little to say, just what came into their heads. She wants the fall leaves to stay. She wants them to because they won't. She knows this. What is it that she wants? Does she want a more assertive lover? Does she want to be a more assertive lover? Bark is peeling off the trees. The sound of it, if amplified, would spread through the veins of the air in the park. She wants to know how to do anything differently. The dead leaves lie huddled and still. They crunch under her shoes as she exits the hotel, hoping not to be seen as she is, filled with absurd sensations, skin alive with wind. The leaves that are still on the trees are the bronze of his silky hair. The leaves on the ground are red. Everywhere she looks, the feeling of having looked before, the feeling of having waited to see. She doesn't put this feeling off anymore. She puts up with it. She gives in. The difference is always in the frame. She sees that now. When she closes her eyes, the world does disappear. When she opens them, she's interrupted, finds her body as she left it, naked under the covers. She finds that thinking transports her to another place whose statement is not found. In solitude, real arousal is still possible. The difference is always in the limits, given a wet square of fall and an impenetrable week of surprising, passing obsessions. And there are 2 more sections. She wants a frame of tenderness. A tenderness is an overripeness. At the center of the frame is a single point, which the senses travel toward moderately or aggressively depending on the air's density. In theory, a given point is never reached. Becoming is always incomplete. She knows that if she steps forward, then forward again, over and over she'll make it to the park, where fall berries glow intensely in the cold air. She'll make it back home, where the spines of books flicker on their shelves. her nipples harden. And this is the last section of this poem. Today the leaves crack like glass, they let the wind in. Today she has mixed feelings about pronouns and also the snow that began in the night and continued into the late morning, in which she sits near another, reaches for another's hand. A version of herself drinks coffee slowly, a pour of cream, a pour of whiskey, a ray of sunlight slips through a gap. The room swells, then shrinks. She pictures a different room, then stops, starts again, then stops. She could start again. Thanks very much.
Time for some questions from the beginning. Go ahead, Greg.
When did you begin writing? That's a pretty simple question.
Do you mean when did I start having a sense of myself as someone who wanted to write creatively? I was really young. I was always that person in high school, like writing a poem at the back of math class and bothering my friends, trying to get them to read it while they were actually trying to pay attention to math. So, I always kind of wrote when I was a kid, and I would write poems and I would like read poems and stuff when I was pretty young. But after college, I waited a long time to do an MFA. So there was a long period where I just felt that my writing was for myself. And that kind of went on for a lot of my adult life, and then I kind of decided to pursue it in a more public way. Yeah, but the writing was always there.
Maybe a related question, just hearing the poetry and the nonfiction sort of together, when you sit down to write, do you have that genre in mind? There's so many like similar elements between the two. I was wondering, like, what are the distinctions for you between the two, or are there?
There definitely are. I mean, sometimes I just want to write sentences and want to write in paragraphs, and I think I started writing more in prose when I felt that I wanted to tell a story, which is kind of funny maybe to say because my prose definitely falls into the category of lyric essay. So it's not necessarily as story-driven as people would think prose would be, but for me, it was when I was starting to try to shape, you know, this is a situation, I want to make claims and bring in other sources and stuff like that. So there's a strong sense for me of the sentence and the paragraph versus the line and the rhythms, the different rhythms and forms that are possible with poems. Yeah. Yes?
What made you want to pursue, when you did finally decide to write it in a more public way, what made that change happen?
That's a good question. I think I was actually studying geography. I got a master's degree in geography before I did my MFA. And I wrote this really, really long thesis for that. I did qualitative research, and then I was writing a thesis about these interviews I did, and it all had to do with gentrification and the arts. But I was basically writing a story about these people that I had spoken with, and about San Francisco, and about a particular neighborhood, and about these people that I met. And my mentor in geography was like, oh, your thesis is so well written, I just can sit down and read through it and really enjoy the story, and I can put down my red pen. And I was like, I don't know, is that a compliment? Because I kind of felt like, well, yeah, like I know how to write. I know how to write. And he seemed almost shocked that it wasn't a complete mess, because I think sometimes people studying certain fields, I mean, not everyone is going to feel like they're a writer. But I already felt like I was a writer, so I was giving him something that was shaped. And I spent so much time writing that, and after that I just had this moment where I was like, I just need to write. I need to be writing all the time. So that gave me an opportunity to start writing more, but after that I was just like, I just want to do this. And then after that there was a lot of other stuff, but the MFA was kind of the first step in a way. Yeah, but then life events started making me write, I think, more intimately about myself, and that was another kind of big step for me as a writer, I think.
Do you feel like geography still plays some part in what you do?
Yeah, it does. Although I think it doesn't as much in some of my poems, but it's weird. I mean, all of you probably have interests that sometimes feel like they're very far away from each other, or you might participate in different worlds that don't overlap. And I've had times where I felt like, well, geography is so awesome. I love it as a discipline, but I don't think I'm really writing about it. Or if I'm not going and sitting down and being like, I'm going to write a poem about those cool artists that I interviewed for that gentrification research. You know, it didn't feel like it translated directly. But I'm at a point now where I'm incorporating a lot more of my geography background into my work.
And was that related to what you were talking about at the master
Yeah,
class?
yeah, definitely. Yeah. Other, yeah?
Who are some of your, like, contemporary favorite other poets? I know that can be kind of weird if you're in the same, like, sphere as them, but...
Oh, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not. I mean, I think, like, I feel these books came out in the past year or so, so I'm kind of, in a way, I'm newly a writer with my books in the world, and that feels great. But I'm also, the people that I think about are, for instance, Maggie Nelson. I love her work, and she was the judge for the chapbook, so that was really exciting for me, because there's definitely other generations above me that I really look up to and kind of look at their trajectories. But yeah, I mean, I love Maggie Nelson and I love Claudia Rankine, for instance, especially thinking about work that is kind of crossing genres and moving between lyric essay and poetry. But yeah, there are so many wonderful younger writers. I've even been reading wonderful books by people younger than me that are coming out. Joss Charles has a book called Field that's really interesting. She's a trans woman and she writes about gender in some really fascinating ways. Yeah.
Something that came up when we were talking, that I wonder if you could just talk about it a little bit more when you're reading in the nonfiction, and it appears in the poetry as well, when things start getting autobiographical and then other people's lives enter the narrative that you're telling, in ways that might seem very private for them. Right? I think about like the passages from the nonfiction that you read tonight, right, which include your partner having, you know, life changes and like these very explicitly personal revelations that you are writing about. I was wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about like how I know you have like thought deeply about the ethics of this and like
Yeah,
work
it's
on
such
it.
a complicated issue. Yeah, I write a lot about my partner, and she's also a writer, and we share our work with each other, and she's very supportive of my work and has given me permission and encouragement, even at moments when I was like, I can't publish this, it's too private for you, for me, for us, and she's been supportive, and she has said like, this is a good piece of writing and I want you to try to put it into the world. And she's also writing her own stuff, so we both have weird moments where we are kind of looking at ourselves and the other one's work and thinking like, oh gosh, okay, I wasn't thinking that that's something that might someday be published. But you know, it's kind of a mutual thing, but also a lot of this stuff I don't think I ever would have wanted to publish it without her permission. It would have been too, yeah, it would have been, I think, a violation in some way of her privacy. And I mean, this is a huge issue. I think it comes up across the genres, but obviously in nonfiction, it's a very central discussion. The question of ethics, of writing about family, mothers, fathers, lovers, children, I mean, all these things, or even friends, just writing about someone you know, even writing about someone who has died can be really difficult for people because their family members might not like the way the person is portrayed. So I've heard a lot of nonfiction people talk about this subject, about how they wanted, you know, they were waiting till their parent died to write something really complex and difficult about abuse, but then their siblings said, like, no, you cannot do this because it would shame our family or something. And I think some writers feel that they have to do what they have to do and they're willing to sacrifice relationships, and others will wait for permission and go through that process. But I think the ethics are really important to consider, and they definitely are for me. And I don't have all the answers. Like, sometimes I'm still like, this isn't right. But what I try to do is just write first and then think about it afterward. And that might mean, like, deciding you're not going to publish something, for instance. But when you're generating work and you're thinking and writing and working with language and working with form and narrative and all these things, you kind of just have to let yourself not think about that. But then if you write something that's important to you, there might be people that you have to talk to, and depending on who you are, you probably want to listen to what they have to say. Because yeah, it's oftentimes not just about us if we're telling stories that were shared. That's the shortest answer possible. I mean, it's
Sharon Olds stuck a manuscript of poems in a drawer until she thought her children were old enough to read about their father in the way that she had written about him. But she did the writing first, and then she looked at it, she was like, you stay in a drawer for 20 years.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think the writing always has to come first. Like, you can't be like, well, what if I wrote an amazing memoir, but it was also very difficult material, but well written. You know, I mean, you can't imagine that stuff and imagine the conversations you might have about it until you've done the work of an artist first, I think. And then you see, maybe you didn't even end up wanting to include any of the hard stuff, and then it's not a problem, but probably you did. Probably you included that stuff.
Thank you so much, Cassie.
Yeah, thank you.
I will just remind you briefly of a couple of things. The first is that these broadsides are available. If you are interested in them, come talk to me. Cassie's books are available. If you are interested, come up and talk to them. The short story writer Michael Don, who is reading on Thursday, October 10th at 6:30 p.m. And then his masterclass, The Imaginative Leap on Fictionalizing Lived Experience, which will dovetail nicely with what we've just been talking about, is happening the next day, Friday, October 11th at 12:30. So Thursday 6:30, Friday 12:30. I'm sorry, everyone abandon science colloquium and come to this instead. What now? It's a contest.
I can't disagree.
No, all that happening here. Thank you guys for coming out on your Friday evening, and please join me in thanking Cassie one more time. And now you can stand up and eat more food.